Good morning, philosophers. Hope you're well today. Let's get back into it. The only reason you could remain disturbed about marital problems is that you are vigorously and persistently telling yourself nonsense about them. Change that warped view to a must-free one, and the emotional disturbance will probably diminish or even vanish. You make that change by asking yourself, in writing or in your head again and again, what is the evidence for that must, awful, or can't stand it? Steve did ask himself in the form of written 3-minute exercises. What is the evidence I must have an invariably supportive wife? What is the evidence she must comply with all my sexual requests? What is the evidence the relationship must provide me with total satisfaction? And he concluded over and over, no damned evidence. No reason I have to have an ever-supportive wife, since she may choose not to support me at times. She doesn't always have to comply with my sexual requests, since I don't run the universe. The relationship doesn't have to provide me with total satisfaction, since life and relationships often consist of one hassle after another. Here, in one of Steve's 3-minute exercises, is how he reached some of those conclusions. Steve's 3-minute exercise. A. Activating event. Carol rejects my sexual advances. B. Irrational belief. She must have sex with me whenever I want. C. Emotional consequence. Anger, fury, and rage. D. Disputing. Why must she have sex with me whenever I want? E. Effective new thinking. There's no law of the universe stating Carol must have sex with me whenever I want it. I strongly prefer she does, but I don't run the universe, and I can't control her inclinations. Since she's an independent human being with free will and free choice, she may decide not to have sex at times, perhaps even much of the time. That's very unpleasant, but hardly a horror. Although I distinctly do not like cold, unsexy behavior in my wife, I can stand what I don't like. Rather than eating myself up inside about it, I had better face the fact, once and for all, that whenever I make an advance, Carol may reject me. How unfortunate! But in reality, the cost of enjoying the advantages of any marriage consists of suffering the disadvantages. I can accept that. F. New feeling. Displeasure rather than anger. How vicious circles work. Nearly all serious marital problems involve vicious circles. A vicious circle arises when one partner's response to the other partner's unwelcome behavior actually encourages more of that unwelcome behavior. In the case of Carol and Steve, one vicious circle went like this. Steve didn't like the infrequency of sex with Carol. Steve chose to react by trying to pressure Carol into having sex, by displaying coldness and hostility when this didn't work, by spending less time with Carol, and by being less inclined to share concerns with her. Carol chose to respond by being less inclined to have sex. A vicious circle can always be described from at least 2 points of view. In this case, we could equally well describe it as 1. Carol didn't like Steve's pressuring, coldness, and staying away. 2. Carol chose to react by less frequently agreeing for sex. 3. Steve chose to react to less frequent sex by pressuring, coldness, and staying away. As a result of Steve's 3-minute exercise, some vicious circles were replaced by delicious circles. As Steve succeeded in reducing his resentment about Carol's lack of sexual interest, Carol interpreted Steve as less antagonistic and more supportive. Much to Steve's delight, sex became more frequent. Steve then became more interested in spending more time with Carol and stopped devoting such long hours to work. Steve became more comfortable with sharing things with her. They talked things over more often, and Carol began to feel more comfortable about not always conforming to her mother's wishes. She began to let Steve have his way more often with the kids' upbringing. Oh man. These events began a process in which Carol and Steve abandoned their resentment of each other, became more affectionate, and gave up any thought of ending their relationship. It takes two to tangle. In any vicious circle, each partner plays a necessary role. It follows that a vicious circle can be broken by either partner's unilateral act. In this case, the vicious circle could have been broken by Steve unilaterally behaving in more desirable ways towards Carol, or it could have been broken by Carol deciding to agree to sex more often. This doesn't mean that the outcome would be equally satisfactory for both parties, but Either party can halt the vicious circle. Some common vicious circles. 1. Sheila wants Mark to talk to her more and tells him so. 2. Mark feels criticized. Mark clams up. Charmaine thinks that Victor has become less interested in sex. Charmaine gets used to this idea, draws back, and becomes less physically affectionate. Victor notices this behavior of Charmaine's and also draws back. Frank often works late at the office. Alice feels slighted and acts more coldly to Frank. Frank feels that home is a less welcoming place and becomes more inclined to work late at the office. Andrea criticizes her lover Holly for not giving positive feedback. Holly feels resentful at being criticized. Holly becomes even less inclined to give Andrea positive feedback. Bill feels hurt by Jennifer's insistent scolding. Bill reacts by becoming quiet and withdrawn. Exasperated by Bill's unresponsive behavior, Jennifer tries to get through to him by scolding him more sharply and more frequently. Ruth is tormented by the thought that Harold has his mind on other women. Ruth chooses to react by always being ready to pounce on Harold, sharply monitoring the direction of his eyes and his thoughts. Harold doesn't like receiving this suspicious attention and finds consolation in daydreaming about other women. Applying problem separation to vicious circles. A reader of my Ask Dr. Mike column recently presented me with this common marital dilemma. My husband puts in such long hours at work that I rarely see him, and when I do, he has nothing to say. I'm feeling resentful and hurt. Can you help me? I told this reader that she had two very different problems. Her practical problem was how to get her husband to spend more time with her and be more communicative. Her emotional problem was that she was unnecessarily upsetting herself. I advised her to begin by tackling her emotional problem. It always has at its core some demand of herself, of another person, or a situation. Her thinking went something like this. My husband should spend more time with me. He must care for me. I should not allow him to treat me this way. I must do something to rekindle his love for me. It was this kind of unreasonableness, fueled by her musts and shoulds, that was upsetting her, not her husband's displeasing actions. She would cease to be distraught if she changed her beliefs, getting rid of her shoulds and musts. She would view her plight differently if she said, I strongly prefer my husband to spend more time with me, but I'm determined to enjoy my own projects when he's not around. I don't like it when he ignores me, but I don't run the universe and I don't control him. I keenly desire that he treat me better, but I'm never a worm even if he doesn't. I certainly would like to influence him, so I will act determinedly, not desperately. This more realistic thinking would be the best bet for solving her emotional problem. I advised her next to attack her practical problem systematically. 1. Make a concerted effort to discuss the issue with your husband. Convey your concern and find out how he feels about it. 2. In later discussions, suggest various remedies to the problem until you find some he's willing to try. For instance, have him tell you about his day or ask you about yours. Discuss plans for future shared evenings, weekends, or vacations, or reminisce about past times together. 3. Even if he is at first unwilling to consider any modifications or talk at all, persist in bringing it up. If after some concerted effort you still get nowhere, consider other approaches. 1. Court him and make the relationship so heavenly he decides to improve. 2. Suggest a deal whereby you agree to alter some of your behaviors in exchange for him agreeing to alter some of his. 3. Assume he'll never reform and just improve your own life. 4. Coolly assess the prudence of divorce. If the minuses of the marriage outweigh the pluses, and if this cannot be changed, divorce is the logical option. In that case, give an ultimatum as a last resort and be prepared to stick to it. Something like, although I love you, unless you take this seriously or make changes or get therapy, I'm leaving. Quote, if, while attempting the above strategies, you find yourself becoming resentful, angry, or hurt, that means you are again creating emotional issues out of practical ones. Use the same technique again. Find your unrealistic should or must, then confront and refute it. Kick it out, and resolutely return to implementing your problem-solving strategies. Often, people who take this advice find that their practical problem quickly becomes a whole lot easier. Once they start to question the demand that underlies their emotional problem, they may cease playing out one of the steps in a vicious circle. The woman reader, for example, may well have reacted to her husband's staying away with some behavior that encouraged him to stay away. This behavior might include yelling at him, becoming tearful, or withholding sex. Once she recognizes her belief that he must spend some time with her to be pure foolishness, she may find herself easing back on some of these unhelpful responses. However, the method of separating emotional and practical problems is the best method, regardless of whether it also breaks a vicious circle. The possibility does exist that the other person's behavior will not improve even if you start to behave more rationally, but acting rationally is still the best policy. This book is getting very repetitious, becoming a bit of a struggle to want to continue reading. I will go a bit farther and then reevaluate. A disagreeable duo. Donald and Donna agree that their marriage was rapidly going down the tubes. When they spoke to each other in my office, they were both tight-lipped and reserved. Donald slightly defiant in his manner, and Donna quivering with injured dignity. They had met while working at a small software company and had been married for 3.5 stormy years before they finally came to me for counseling. Donald sported a trim blonde beard and a lean and hungry look, while Donna carried 20 extra pounds. Donald described himself as enjoying hard work. He frequently stayed late at the office. In addition, he was currently immersed in 2 other projects, adding a porch to their house and restoring his boat. He complained that Donna felt like a failure and kept letting him know it. She was usually depressed, yet always had to have the last word. Donna, he said, would pressure him and get angry whenever he didn't immediately take her hints to do needed chores around the house. She cuts me up and tells me I'm a failure. She tries to control me by telling me exactly how to run my life. She rants and raves when I don't do every little thing her way, and then I get depressed and feel as though I have to walk on eggshells to avoid an emotional explosion. I turned to Donna, who seemed to be seething with suppressed emotion. And what's your side? She responded tersely that he had become more contentious lately. In the middle of an argument, he would raise his voice, swear, kick, and punch things. He was unreliable, promising to fix things and then never getting to them. When he did work on some project, he would always leave a terrible mess. He was cold and indifferent except for sex, and he would always favor his own kids over hers. Donna abruptly stopped talking and stared sullenly into space, fighting back tears. Since an emotional catharsis in the office would prove a waste of their valuable time and money, I offered Donna a tissue, but continued my dialogue with Donald. Counseling half a couple. Donna didn't return after the first session, so I worked on the marriage with Donald alone. It was a bit like swimming with one hand tied behind my back. Slow, difficult, and quite a challenge, with a diminished chance of total success. However, I explained to Donald about vicious circles and how one person could often improve matters by breaking the circle. Later, I encouraged Donald to keep a therapy notebook divided into various sections with titles such as irrational beliefs, situations where I get upset, and undesirable emotions I experience. Over the next few weeks, Donald collected a number of his irrational beliefs. Donna should not continually pressure me. She must not cut me up. Life ought not to consist of unnecessary problems. Donna should never say I'm a failure. I should not have to restrict myself. I must not upset Donna, and it's awful when she becomes so hostile and weepy. Donna should not try to control my life. I have to help the kids, or I'm a louse. I must make the relationship succeed. Donna must not punish me for not doing things her way. My ex-wife must not endanger my relationship with the kids. Over the next few sessions, Donald and I devised these homework assignments to improve the marriage. 1. Write out a 3-minute exercise every day and bring the past 7 days' output to me every week. 2. Give Donna positive feedback every day. 3. Speak to Donna without swearing. 4. Speak to Donna without raising my voice. Speak to Donna without kicking and punching things. Go along with her nutty demands whenever possible, and when not possible, don't become excited about it. Calmly do my own thing at times. Set up conversation times with Donna. Push myself to show affection to Donna, especially when I don't feel like it. Read How to Live with a Neurotic by Albert Ellis. Remind myself twice a day of the bottom line. I'm doing it for me. Implement the above strategies for 4 months, then leave if they don't work. Oof. Donald's 3-minute exercise. A. Activating event. Donna seems angry at me for something I did, but I haven't the foggiest notion of what. B. Irrational belief. I must not upset Donna. It's awful she's so upset. I'm a skunk. C. Emotional consequences. Depression. Walking on eggshells. D. Disputing. Why must I not upset Donna? How is it awful she's so upset? How am I a skunk? E. Effective new thinking. Although I prefer not to distress Donna, no law of the universe states that I must not distress Donna. At worst, I'm an imperfect person acting imperfectly, not a skunk. Being human and fallible, Donna will disturb herself when she chooses to. I'm not in control of that. It's sad that she does that to herself, but not the end of the world. She has angered herself in the past and survived, and unfortunately will anger herself in the future, but will probably survive. Depressing myself about it just makes matters worse and doesn't help Donna. B. By philosophically accepting that all relationships have their difficulties, that another relationship might have fewer or more hassles but never zero, I will diminish the stress I've been creating for myself. As long as the advantages of this relationship outweigh the disadvantages, it would be wise to hang in while attempting to improve it and minimize my unrealistic notions about it. F. New feeling. Regret rather than depression. Being myself rather than walking on eggshells. During the 4-month trial period, Donald succeeded at softening his stubbornness, acting more attentively, giving Donna positive feedback, and greatly reducing his tantrums. For her part, Donna appeared to become overtly less critical, but did not change significantly enough to make the relationship worth it for Donald. It's difficult for most individuals to be untroubled simply living with themselves. When two people attempt a partnership together, their problems are often compounded. However, when couples conscientiously use the 3-minute therapy approach, they dramatically increase their chances of having a fulfilling relationship. Interesting. Okay, well, my thought today comes from yesterday. Yesterday, I didn't get much productive work done. It started out with a surprise clinic visit for my daughter's treatment. Everything's going well. Turned out well. Everything's good. But it kind of disrupted the entire morning of the day. And priorities and all that. As much as I enjoy this think time and read time, there are definitely some things that necessitate not doing them, and yesterday ended up being one of those days. And some of the things that I dealt with yesterday that were difficult, I was able to handle really well. I'm proud of how I handled myself yesterday, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And I know exactly how I was able to handle it so much better than otherwise. And it was by expectations, literally just setting expectations more in line with reality. So I knew that there were going to be certain problems when I got to the hospital with Dagny. I expected them. I was ready for them. And I had a plan for how to handle it when they did. They ended up happening. I executed my plan. Things ended up really well. I didn't get stressed. I wasn't upset. I wasn't mad. I wasn't anxious. I wasn't frustrated. The day remained pleasant, even though I was dealing with something that was very difficult at the time, or something that would have definitely been upsetting otherwise. I was dealing with unreliable people that made promises that they broke to me, that they would take on and complete certain responsibilities, and they just admitted that they forgot. And when they made those promises to me, I set my expectations. There's a good chance that these people are not the type of people that take their promises seriously, and so they might drop the ball, and you need to be ready for that, expect it, and have a plan in place for it. I did. I executed my plan yesterday and corrected the situation. that might be the most important thing about the 15 minutes of think time. Like, not the read time that I share with you, but I also I try and do 15 minutes of think time every day where I just let myself think about the problems at hand, the day that I'm about to have, the things I'm about to work on doing, and doing a little bit of predicting the future, setting my expectations, things like that. If nothing else, like, forget like self-work, self-help, self-knowledge, self-therapy, forget all that stuff. Like, if nothing else, spending just 15 minutes every morning planning the day, predicting how it's going to go, setting expectations as close to reality as they will probably be, lowering expectations in a lot of ways, planning for failure of yourself and others, having plans in place for these things just significantly reduces the stress and frustration and anger of life in general, which allows you to be more tranquil. Being more tranquil gives you a sort of a feedback loop where the tranquility allows you to better plan and handle the things that you didn't expect or that you didn't plan for. So it's good all around. And anyway, I guess the summary is I'm proud of my performance yesterday. And I'm trying to like look back on it, see what parts of it were really good and helpful so that I can make sure to continue focusing on and implementing those. And also what parts are not working. One of the things that's really not working, and it's just not, for various reasons, and I've talked about it several times, is the one thing every day as if it was the last thing. I don't know why it's not working, really. I mean, aside from the reasons I've already kind of discussed, I'm hesitant to give up on it because when I set a goal for a month, I like to try, do the thing for a month. So I'm probably going to continue attempting it, but it's been like a 50-50 success rate. Honestly, the most successful attempts at it are on the days when I set the goal or the one thing goal to be spending time with my kids. Those have been the most successful days. They've been really good. Other things, other days it's either been just like there's nothing that rises to the occasion of a one thing, or I don't know. I don't know. It's weird. I'm not sold on it yet, but we're gonna keep trying it for another month or whatever. Okay, well, we ran a little long today, but guys, I hope you're enjoying these. I hope not many people followed over to the new channel, but that's fine. We'll see how it goes. We'll give it some time. Guys, have a great day.